we go further with care, because next to Iftikhar, we have Kea in the team. He is also almost obsessed, I would say, with making something perfect for not a few workers, but for, let's say, as many as they can. So Kea started we started with minimum wages in 2006 already, but step by step by step, we are there to say, well, we can do it global, truly global. Well, truly global is 196. Of course, there are many more countries still, 200 and more than 200. But at this moment, we show 100, we show many minimum wages. Yeah, where are you? I can't see you now, because we would like you to ask to present your keynote. And I don't see you. Kea?
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And we have your presentation here. Perfect. Yes. And I can't see you yet, but you may start. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Do you see me?
Yeah.
No. Yeah?
Yeah, I see you.
Okay. Okay, this is a joint work with Maarten van Klaveren. He is also as a researcher associated with WageIndicator Foundation. Next slide, please. Okay, governments have the right to set minimum wages, and the ILO provides guidelines how to do so. So government should take into account a wage for guaranteeing a decent life, or they should take into account the risk of inflation and negative employment effects. And there's an important role for unions and employers to work towards a realistic, transparent, and enforceable statutory minimum wage. However, we do not have, on a global scale, we do not have really insight into the minimum wage rates. We do have databases with minimum wages, but the World Bank and the ILO have such a minimum wage database, but they have one rate per country per year. And that is basically not detailed enough to really understand what's going on with minimum wages in the countries. So there's the minimum wage indicator minimum wage database, and they have multiple rates per country per month. So why do we have this minimum wage database? As Pauline said, in 2006, our team in India started to publish minimum wages. Why? Because web visitors were searching for this. And the main reason is that overall in almost all countries, wage boards, governments and their wage boards are well qualified for decision making, but they are less so for communicating their decisions. And particularly in India, this was really a big problem because India has more than 10,000 different minimum wages. So there is a demand from the public for this kind of information. Between 2007 and 2013, teams in many countries of the Wage Indicator published minimum wages on their websites. And from 2013 onward, Wage Indicator started to systematic collect data on minimum wage rates. They initially started with 80 countries. In 2018, they developed a tool, which is called the Minimum Wage app. And so that means that rates are entered into the app and they are published directly on the national web pages. And by 2021, the minimum wage database included rates for 201 countries, totaling to more than 20,000 entries. And why 201 countries and not 196? That is because the USA has a couple of territories. The USA defines the minimum wage rate for these territories, but these rates are far lower than the rates in the mainland of the USA. So whenever we make a table comparing the lowest and the highest minimum wage rate in a country, all of a sudden our tables are disturbed because we included those territories. So therefore it's 201 countries. Next slide, please. Okay, for 168 countries, we can compute the hourly wages and convert them PPP corrected into standardized US dollars. And in the graph, you see that more than 70 countries have a minimum wage, an hourly minimum wage rate between 0 and 2 US dollars. And it goes down to 42 countries, 2 to 4 US dollars, and there are very few countries which have minimum wage rates above $10, 10 US dollars an hour. So that is basically the overall global picture. Next slide, please. Okay, how complex are minimum wage rates by country? Do most of the countries have one rate for the whole country? Yes, there are 77 of the 201 countries that have one minimum wage rate only, and that minimum wage rate is applicable to the whole labor force, to the whole dependent labor force. Then there are more countries, more than 20, that have one minimum wage rate, but it's only a partial minimum wage rate. So that can be for the domestic workers only, or for agriculture only, or for whatever they like to choose. Then there are 53 countries that have 2 to 10 different rates. And as you can see, there are even 3 countries that have more than 1,000 different rates. That's Ecuador, Pakistan, and India. And India has more than 10,000 rates, a world record. Next slide, please. So what is the gap between the lowest and the highest minimum wage rate within a country? Well, that is India. The highest minimum wage rate is 30 times higher as the lowest one. Brazil, 19 times higher, the highest compared to the lowest rate. USA, 8 times is the highest compared to the lowest. And in the graph, you see the countries that really have a difference between the highest and the lowest rate, and you see the highest ones at the right-hand side. So that is the kind of analysis we conduct with our minimum wage database. Next slide, please. How often do countries update their rates? And this is a disastrous slide. The graph is disastrous because 77 of the 201 countries did not update from 2016 onwards. So they do not take any decisions whatsoever. On the other hand, there are quite some 32 countries who updated already by January 21. So that is very recent. So those countries are really up to date. 22 countries updated in 2020, more so did in 2019, some did in 2018, but then you see the drop and a very high percentage that does not do any updating at all. And I think here is for the enforcement of labor law and the aim of having decent wages, this is really a problem. Next slide, please. Our database, which is basically, we have a team under supervision of Iftikhar Ahmad in Pakistan, who updates the rates every month for all countries. And we have one team in India, Khushi Mehta, who updates the rates for India. So together they work on updating the database every month, and every month, as soon as there's an update, they are published online in the WageIndicator minimum wage pages. And they are so in the English language on the WageIndicator.org, and they are in the national languages in the national websites. So this database allows us to better understand what kind of policy governments follow, given the fact that ILO recommends different dimensions in setting minimum wages. So there are 120 countries of the 201 that really have full coverage. So even if a country has a special rate for urban and for rural, we still consider it as full coverage. And so that is slightly over half of the countries have full coverage and the others have partial coverage. So there's a group within the labor market that is not covered at all. How many countries follow purchasing power policies? That is, particularly for the large countries, the cost of living differs between regions. And we see that 25 countries follow this policy. They have a breakdown of the minimum wage rates by province, by city, urban versus rural. So, and these are really the very large countries. It's India, it is USA, it is China, it's Japan. These countries are differentiating purchasing power. Then there are countries who are really mimicking collective bargaining. And those are 57 countries, and they break down the minimum wage rates by industry or by occupation, and most likely they have wage boards specific for these industries or occupational groups. So we assume the collective bargaining in these countries is poorly developed, and therefore wages are set by the minimum wage boards. And then there are a fourth set of countries that are addressing specific interest groups. I'm almost done. So eight countries have specific rates for economic processing zone workers. 10 have specific rates for age groups, for youth or for under 18 or so on. And 19 countries even have specific rates for domestic workers, which are most likely lower than the remaining rates. Can I go to the last slide? Okay, thank you for listening. Here's the web link, and here are our email addresses in case of questions. Do not hesitate to email us. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Maarten, Kea. And of course, people will be always in touch with you about, well, as you know, on daily basis, if there is a small, let's say, mistake somewhere in the country with a minimum wage, then we know that within 5 minutes. So that is basically how perfect the tool becomes, because each time we have a new minimum wage in the country, then people react and we improve and improve. So thanks a million. I should say it's Kea and Iftikhar who should, well, they deserve the biggest applause of all because they have been doing it with their team. And